Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our ceremony. I'm Annie Andrews, the Assistant Administrator for Human Resource Management here at the FAA, and I'm a proud veteran of the United States Navy. It gives me great pride to be a part of an agency that has such deep commitment to our country's veterans. As many of you know, our veterans are a large part of our workforce family, and we are proud of the continuing commitments they make to our nation each and every day. At this time, I'd like to ask that you please stand for the presentation of our national colors by the United States Military District of Washington Color Guard, accompanied by the Old Guard fife and drum, and the singing of our national anthem by Tim Brooks from the Office of Aviation Safety.
Present arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Colors. Port arms.
Flags up.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please join me in a round of applause for the Old Guard fife and drum, the United States Military District of Washington Color Guard, as well as Mr. Tim Brooks for the wonderful rendition of our national anthem. Now it gives me great pleasure, and it is an honor and a privilege to introduce the Honorable Michael Werther, our FAA Administrator.
Well, thank you very much, Annie, and good afternoon, everyone. This is a very special occasion. I'm quite happy to be here as we celebrate America's veterans, particularly those of you that are part of our family here at the FAA. I'd like to start off by taking a moment to recognize a few people with us today, and starting first with the veterans. Would everyone who is a veteran please stand up? Now, I think as you would agree, as we look around the room, what do we see? We see men, we see women, we see people of all ages, of all backgrounds, of all ethnic groups, and of every conceivable religion. But as diverse as you are, it is important to recognize that we are all united by your willingness to wear our country's uniform and your deep and abiding commitment to our nation's freedom. So I'd like to thank you for your service and recognize that our nation owes you a sincere debt of gratitude. So again, thank you for all that you have done and continue to do. You've all heard me say that the FAA is at a very unique moment in our history right now. The growing popularity of unmanned aircraft or commercial space launches, well, they're bringing new aviators into our airspace, and that's happening on a daily basis. Just think, 2 years ago, who would have thought that we would have more unmanned aircraft registered in our civilian fleet than we have manned aircraft? Manufacturers are developing breathtaking new technologies that are totally reshaping this industry that many of us have worked in for many, many years. But with all of these advancements, building on our safety record, and boy is it an impressive safety record, with all of these new players and with all these new challenges, I think we recognize that we have to deal with more each and every day. How do we ensure an airspace that works for everyone? How do we keep it safe? How do we accommodate new users? How do we maintain safety but enable innovation? Those are the challenges and questions that we deal with each and every day. And I have every confidence that we will find the right answers, but finding those right answers depends on getting the best people that we can working at them. Now, we have in our family of some 47,000 people, over 15,000 veterans here at the FAA. That is a full third of our agency. And we are always looking for ways so that we can have more join our ranks. What we need here at the FAA is not all that different from the qualities that define a successful service member: adaptability and resourcefulness, the ability to think fast, the ability to solve problems, a commitment to your team and to the mission. The fact is, I think we can all say that the FAA is better and stronger because of the veterans that we have in our workforce here at the FAA. And they can be found at every level of the agency. You just heard from Annie Andrews, who joined us in the last year as our Assistant Administrator for Human Resources after a career in the Navy, all the way to the members of our current class of interns. And many of these individuals aren't just contributing to the FAA and its mission. Many of you are contributing and making a huge difference in the communities that you live in. Our team in Fort Worth recently celebrated a very special day, Marvin Sutton Day. What they wanted to commemorate was Martin's 35 years of service as an air traffic controller for both the FAA and the United States Air Force. Now, as distinguished as his professional career is, though, Marvin's personal achievements are quite impressive as well. He serves as an election judge in his district and goes to classrooms to talk to young people about voting rights. He attends career days to educate students about being an air traffic controller, getting that next generation of aviators excited about careers in this great industry. And last year he bought 250 baseball caps out of his own money for his fellow employees to show appreciation for their military service. Now, Marvin's not the only one that is giving back to his fellow veterans. Keith Davenport previously served in the Marine Corps and is now a technician at the Nashville EMA System Support Center. Now, Keith volunteers for a lot of things in his community, including playing taps at the funerals of veterans as part of a group called Bugles for America. And then there's Stan Godet, who served in the Air Force and is now an aviation safety inspector in Renton, Washington. For the last 6 years, Stan has been accompanying Boy Scout troops to Bayview Cemetery to clean the tombstones of service members who rest there. Now, that's the thing about civil servants in general, but I think it's certainly the case for our veterans. Service isn't just an idea. It is not just a buzzword. It's actually part and parcel of who you are. And I'm happy you've chosen to continue building your legacy of service here at the FAA. We always take a moment to recognize this time of year. But please know that the contributions you make every day, the service you provide to Americans, that is something that all Americans value every day. On any given day, 1.5 million to 2 million people are getting on airplanes. And it is our job to ensure that they are safe. It's a 24/7 responsibility, and you are incredibly good at it. Now, of course, we don't just work with veterans here at the FAA. We also partner with other government agencies and with active members of the military, where we share airspace, where we keep it safe, and we secure and provide a secure environment for thousands and thousands of flights each and every day. I'm pleased to introduce one of those great partners that we have in government, and that's our next speaker. Major General Mark Sassville serves as the Special Assistant to the Director, Air National Guard, for the Deputy Chief of Operations in the United States Air Force. And so again, please join me. First of all, let me thank you for your service and join me in welcoming General Sassville.
Good afternoon, everyone. Administrator Huerta, thank you so much for the opportunity to take part in this event and address the team. It's always a great day when you can escape the Pentagon, and from some of the faces in here, the haggard looks that you have, I know that you spent time in the Pentagon, some of you, so you know what I'm talking about. And it's an even better day when you can come up here and represent the Department of Defense and celebrate the service of our military veterans. And also, I'll take this opportunity to highlight the special relationship between our organizations. DoD and FAA share a long and proud history, and more on that later. Mr. Brooks, do you have a call sign? See, in the Air Force, we give people call signs, so I'm imagining you have one. But if you don't, I recommend that your compadres call you Velvet. That was the smoothest rendition of the national anthem I've ever heard. Thank you. I hope that sticks, by the way.
You will.
Okay. I'd like to thank the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps and that fantastic Joint Honor Guard for honoring our precious callers. And I understand the Army drill team was here earlier and they did a performance. Obviously, I wasn't able to escape soon enough, but I'm sure it was a fantastic routine, and I hope some of you were able to enjoy that. And finally, I'd again like to thank all the military veterans of this venerable organization for their service, as well as all of the FAA employees who might be watching online for taking time out of your day to pay this tribute. As a nation, we celebrate this federal holiday of Veterans Day in order to give many of our members, both in the DoD and the FAA, the chance to pause and pay tribute to those who have served. However, while many of us in staff positions do get Friday off, the same can't be said about many of our uniformed service members, civilians, and contractors in the field, yours included. We're both 24/7 organizations. Our missions do not stop. I realize many of you will still be out there on duty, executing your missions, keeping our skies safe. And for that, we all thank you. The FAA and Department of Defense have a very special relationship, as I mentioned, one that has grown over the years and continues to be of incredible importance. We work together on a daily basis, and the results of your work are vital to the defense of our nation and safety of our citizens. When disaster strikes, the FAA and DoD are there to minimize damage and expedite recovery. From Hurricane Sandy in 2012 to extensive wildfires on the West Coast to Hurricane Matthew last month, our interagency cooperation is critical to ensuring the safety of millions around the United States. And looking forward, we'll need to stay in lockstep as we have plenty of challenges to navigate together, including developing next-generation capabilities, integrating small unmanned aerial systems, and there's plenty of them, and facilitating travel to and from space. I've witnessed the benefits of our relationship firsthand, not only in my current position in the Pentagon, but throughout my career as an aviator. I'll use the morning of September 11th, 2001 as an example. At that time, I was assigned to the 121st Fighter Squadron of the DC Air National Guard, otherwise known as the Capitol Guardians. We were flying F-16s out of what was then named Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. I'm sure you're all familiar. Shortly after we heard of the attacks in New York City and the Pentagon, my squadron mates and I found ourselves scrambling to get our jets airborne to defend the National Capital Region and the airspace within our reach. I can still vividly recall the consistent, clear communication with Washington Tower controllers as we raced from one inbound plane to the other. We, the pilots and controllers, quickly settled on a protocol that described what we now call tracks of interest by their radial and DME from Washington Reagan Airport. It was a true team effort. Using the tools available to them, the controllers let us know where all of the tracks were, and we flew as fast as we could to visually identify them and escort them away from the seat of government. Despite the fog and friction of this attack on our homeland, the men and women of the FAA responded brilliantly in the face of adversity. On top of the Herculean task of ensuring all commercial aircraft were safely grounded across the country, the FAA consistently and accurately apprised airborne military planes of the ongoing situation. It was teamwork at its finest, and just when our nation needed it most. Now, deviate from the script here for a second. I was very pleased to see my buddy, my former squadron mate, Joe LaHood, in the back. Joe, stand up for a second. He was there with me on 9/11. He knows all about this. Thanks, Joe. Good to see you. As you all know better than I, the FAA has a robust staff of professionals dedicated to the safety of aerospace. All of them are critical to mission accomplishment. Looking closely at the numbers, military veterans represent almost 1/3 of the FAA workforce, over 15,800 employees. We know that because we keep records on all of you, just in case you're wondering. That's a joke. And they're from all walks of military life, separated, retired, and many still serving in the Guard and Reserves. The veterans serving the FAA aren't just controllers either. They are lawyers, engineers, contract specialists. And Annie, you're telling me you have a couple painters, I think, and woodworkers on the payroll as well? That's not a surprise. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that we have so many veterans that want to work at the FAA. They are already trained in various disciplines and are well versed with the concepts of safety and efficiencies from their days in uniform. But most importantly, they already embody the FAA core values. Your values of safety, excellence, integrity, people, and innovation can be found, some even verbatim, in the core values of the Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, and the Navy. So our veterans walk through the doors of the FAA with your values baked right in. Their transition to a new organization of national service is a natural one, and our DoD-FAA relationship only becomes stronger. The FAA has a proud lineage of veterans from its highest ranks. In fact, the first 6 administrators of this organization all at some point served in the military. In this very room we are in right now, the Lieutenant General Pete Quesada Conference Room is named after, again, as you know, the FAA's first administrator. General Quesada was a true pioneer. In January of 1929, then Second Lieutenant Elwood Quesada of the Army Air Corps was part of a team led by a young major by the name of Carl Spaatz. The team's objective was to demonstrate the fledgling concept of air-to-air refueling. And as such, this team of 5 intrepid aviators flew an Atlantic Fokker C-2A transport aircraft named the question mark for 151 straight hours. Wow. They refueled 43 different times over a distance of 11,000 miles. Air refueling was a top priority for General Spaatz when he became the Air Force's first Chief of Staff and helped to revolutionize U.S. air power. And by the way, on the same flight was a man by the name of Ira C. Aker, for those of you who might be interested in air power history. Administrator Najib Halabi was a Navy test pilot in World War II and made the first transcontinental jet flight in U.S. history. And finally, before becoming administrator, William McKee retired as a four-star general and Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force. For each administrator's military service, I could list thousands of current and former FAA employees that also have served and have their own proud stories and accomplishments for which we are, as a nation, grateful. I'll close with one more short story. Perhaps my most unforgettable memory of the FAA is from 2003. Only a few short years after 9/11, my same squadron, the Capitol Guardians, was deployed to a classified location in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. It wasn't so long ago, but it's easy to forget the domestic atmospherics. I'll remind you, there was so much uncertainty at the time. We were, as a nation, are we doing the right thing, we were thinking. And within the squadron, we even had more questions. We didn't know how long we would be gone for. What would combat actually be like? Would we be lucky enough to make it back to our families? And if we did, what would the public think about what we had just done? Before we knew it, and after enough long days and scary nights to achieve our objectives, it was time to redeploy back to the U.S. And while we had been proud to serve our nation, we were equally as excited to return home to our families. But as the squadron commander, I was still uneasy about the reception that my airmen might face after we landed in Conus. We finally crossed into U.S. airspace on our transatlantic flight to Andrews. And I'll never forget the transmission from the first U.S. controller after I checked on frequency. "Welcome home," was his reply. And that is when I knew that things were going to be okay. Those two words don't amount to a weighty speech, but that's all it took to calm down a nervous lieutenant colonel. Perhaps those words had that effect on me because I knew how much that phrase had meant to my father, a Vietnam veteran who waited years after the conflict to hear those words. That controller may or may not have been a veteran, but he certainly knew what it meant to serve. And that's what makes your organization and this relationship so very special. Our people understand and thrive in the dual missions of national safety and security. So in closing, I'd like to thank the administrator one more time for the honor and the opportunity to speak today. Please enjoy the holiday and take a moment to remember our veterans and what their service has brought to this country. And most of all, thank you to all the veterans for your service, defending our nation, and continued service keeping our airspace safe.
Thank you, General Sasseville, for those words of history, but more than anything, your personal story and how that tied in with you and your father as another generation of veterans serving. We'd like to present you with a token of appreciation for helping us give this tribute to our veterans. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We would like to wish all of those here joining us also by way of webcast a wonderful holiday. And I ask that you keep our men and women in uniform, protecting and serving democracy around the world. Keep them in your mind and thought during this holiday period. They're in service to all of us. Keep them in your thoughts and prayers. This concludes our ceremony, and thank you for participating.